And we are live. Good morning, everyone. I'm John Coleman from ApocatastasisInstitute for the Humanities, an alternative college and high school here on New Milford, Connecticut, USA. The purpose of this live broadcast, thanks to your generosity and recording, is to get day 187 of the project in the bag. We're making our way through Apocatastasis' unified curricula, looking as it does and integrating as it does poetry, history, literature, philosophy over a 3-year cycle. Now, the part that we're broadcasting live is our very simple, basic bones 1-year courses. To find out more about the project, you may go to our website, linked below. With that being said, we'll get an advert from the college and we will go from there. We're going to be looking at the World's Fairs today, and we have a lot to get into here. Again, we're in this crazy 19th century, and with that you have such industrialization, you have new mythologies replacing old mythologies. And one of those, most prominently, maybe more prominently than anything, is progress. It's a progress that's interpreted in political changes, from monarchy to republicanism. It's a progress that's even seen to exist in the natural world with evolution and Darwinianism. It's a progress in history. If you're of a Marxist bent that we looked at, right? You see all of human history refining itself and its labor relations to come to a certain point. And it's obviously, this idea of progress is obviously something born out in the technological sphere, with gizmos and gadgets and trains and telegraphs and so forth. Now, the image that we had to begin with actually is from the Queen's 1960s World's Fair. I remember as a little boy seeing this globe, this distinctive globe in Flushing Meadows. So God be with the days, as we say. And here's the website of Apocatastasis in any case. So we had our great Harriman hike lately, and I'm a little bit sunburned from that. But what I would like to bring your attention to and mine here at the college as we enter these beautiful summer months is our program with Vandana Rotaria from EJ classes all the way in India. And of course, we know Vandana as our capable math tutor here at the Institute, but Vandana is a Renaissance woman and she has many skills, and one of those other skills is cursive. And so we have a summer program that is designed for children to learn how to write and to love how to write beautifully. It's certainly here in North America a dying skill, frankly. It's a dying skill. It's one we all have to work on. The past few weeks, I kind of have fallen out of practice with my own daily handwriting regime. I like to set aside 5 or 10 minutes every day to work on that. And it had gathered a bit of rust, let's say, with some other projects, and things fall through the cracks. And it really was quite interesting to see how quickly one's handwriting can turn to cocky without regular training, frankly, and regular exercise of it. Use it or lose it. And my goodness gracious, have we not lost cursive? Well, there are many beautiful reasons to learn how to write beautifully. Hopefully what we're saying is also beautiful. So you can find out about this. So we have the main poster, and Vandana actually has a sub-site here on the Institute's page. If you go to Class Collabs, go down to EJ Classes, and you'll not only see the same poster again, but also a very interesting discussion herself and I had about cursive handwriting, and what was supposed to be a 10-minute recording turned into an hour and 10 minutes, because there is a lot going on with handwriting and what's going on in this whole process of human communication. So speaking of gizmos and gadgets, at World's Fairs in 19th centuries. Our little gizmos have brought us some cool things. I'm able to speak to you probably hundreds of miles away without raising my voice. That's pretty cool. Well, likewise, everything's a two-edged sword, I suppose. And so one of the downsides of all this technology is we lose very profound things like cursive handwriting, which is more than, as we get into in this presentation, more than just pretty letters on a page. It's a lot deeper than that. So I encourage you to check that out. I encourage you to enroll your children in Vandana's EJ classes summer program here with the Institute. All sorts of good things. Other programs as well from Vandana. Okay, so let's get on. We're looking at the World's Fair, and we're going to begin actually in England in the 1850s. Most of our work this week will be in the mid 1850s. It does seem to be a time period that our author H.G. Wells brings us to, that he likes to idle his engines at. You'll notice that we've been, pretty much in that neck of the woods for the past week and a half or so, and for this week to come. Speaking of communism, Lenin has a famous saying that sometimes there are centuries when nothing happens, and then there are sometimes weeks when centuries happen. And so history does have this phenomena to it. Sometimes a lot happens in a little bit of time, and sometimes a little amount of things happen in a very long time, almost imperceptibly happening. But let's get our poem now. And again, poetry is a vital aspect of the project, and you may download our provisional 1-week outline of poetry, and it does have the texts from our project website linked below. This poem is entitled appropriately World's Fair by John Berryman for the mid-20th century. Here we go. The crowd moves forward on the midway, back and forward, men and women from every state, insisting on their motion like a clock. I stand by the roller coaster and wait. An hour I have waited, fireworks on the lake. Tell me it's late, and yet it is not that which rattles at the bottom of my mind. Slight, like a faint sound of sleepy on the wind, to the traveler when he has lost his track. Suddenly, in torn images, I trace the inexhaustible ability of a man, loved once, long lost, still to prevent my peace, still to suggest my dreams and starve horizon. Childhood speaks to me in an austere face, the chaste maid, only to the thriving swan looks back and back with lecherous intent, being one nail known in excrement. Middleton's grave in a foregone place. That recognition fades now, and I stand, exhausted, angry, beside the wooden rail, where tireless couples mount still hand in hand for the complex drug of catapult and fall, to blot out the life they cannot understand and never will forgive. The wind is stale, the crowd thins, and my friend has not yet come. It is long past midnight, time to track for home, and my work and the instructor down my mind. Again, World's Fair by John Berryman. There's a line here that stuck out for me. Now, where is that line? That's the question. Well, that's the great thing about this writing. You can always go back to it. I thought it'd be in the first stanza, though. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Slight like the faint sound, sleepy on the wind. Slight like the faint sound, sleepy on the wind to the traveler when he has lost his track. There's a lot of playing with the idea of track here. Track is a noun and track is a verb. I'm going to track home, he says towards the end. All right, so there you go. John Berriesman's World Fair. We might get another poem actually about the World's Fair in by Tennyson before we're through. So we're going to check the tech here, and we are grand. And as we step off, let's get a bit of music here. I'm enjoying this feature. Hope you're enjoying it, the background music stuff. Have all sorts of options. Some are more appropriate than others. I don't necessarily think the fiddle Celtic music is the best for the background. It tends to get a bit too loud when you don't want it to be. But anyhow, this should do nicely. Put you to sleep if I don't put you to sleep, huh? Okay. So what we're going to need to do now is change our camera and take a look at that World's Fair that we've been going on about here. Again, the main workhorse for our time together in these daily broadcasts is H.G. Wells's Outline of History. It's not a perfect text by any means, no text is, but it is an eminently useful one. It covers the main bases, and I almost see it like a catechism or a textbook, meaning the text here is not really meant to be the final word so much as it's not meant to be the final word, period. But it's not meant to be all there is said. It's meant to be taught. These books are really meant to be gone over with a teacher in a classroom, much like a catechism or some other type of textbook. A lot of people don't realize that books are to be used differently. And if our handwriting skills are going to seed, well, so are our reading skills, and this idea that different genres are approached differently. I mean, we know that with a phone book. We know that with a menu. But beyond things like that, most people, when they see prose like this, don't realize there's a whole different use for it than your traditional long form reading. Oh, here we go. And all right, so this is section 7 on the 19th century chapter, looking at the World's Fair. After the middle of the 19th century, which is where we're hanging out at, this world of new powers and old ideas, that's the 19th century. New powers, scientifically, economically, industrially, politically, are coming into a world of old ideas, and there necessarily must be a collision. This fermenting new wine in the old bottles of diplomacy broke out through the flimsy restraint of the Treaty of Vienna into a series of wars. And we'll look later this week at the Franco-Prussian War as well as the Crimean War. In fact, earlier, about 20 years earlier, is the Crimean War in 1850, right? 1851, something like that. But by an ironical accident, the new system of disturbances was preceded by a peace festival in London, the Great Exhibition of 1851. So this kicks off your World's Fairs. They call it a Great Exhibition. This exhibition deserves a paragraph or so. The moving spirit, now we're looking at the spirit in history, the spirit of life that we looked at last week, for instance, with natural, unseen political boundaries compared to actual legal boundaries. There's a spiritual component to this. The moving spirit in this exhibition was Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, a nephew of Leopold I, the German king who had been placed upon the Belgian throne in 1831, and who was the maternal uncle of the young Queen Victoria of England. She, Vicky, had become queen in 1837 at the age of 18. Two young cousins, they were the same age, had married in 1840 under their uncle's auspices. And Prince Albert was known as the Prince Consort. And we'll save our sniggering about Prince Albert and strange body modifications that are named after him. We will save that for after class. We will not get into the prurient, not here. Anyway, he was a young man of sound intelligence and exceptional education, and he seems to have been greatly shocked by the mental stagnation into which England had sunken. And I don't think he was the only one, right? England in the 19th century is a host to various reform movements, whether that's temperance or humanitarianism earlier in the century, anti-slavery, religious revivals like the Methodists. So, I mean, it's not just Prince Albert that's suggesting reform. Oxford and Cambridge, those once starry centers, were still recovering, but slowly, from the intellectual ebb of the latter 18th century. At neither university did the annual matriculation number more than 400. The examinations were, for the most part, viva voce ceremonies. Oral, we would say oral exams, which lends themselves, if you're not careful, to over informality. Except for two colleges in London, the University of London and one in Durham, this was all the education on a university footing that England had to offer. How different that would be a century later after the Great War and the Second War. Mass education, even in Europe. It was very largely the initiative of the scandalized young German, Prince Albert, who had married the British Queen, which produced the University Commission of 1850. And it was with a view to waking up England further that he promoted the first international exposition, which was to afford some opportunity for a comparison of the artistic and industrial products of the various European nations. The project was bitterly opposed in the House of Commons. It was prophesied that England would be overrun by foreign rogues and revolutionaries who would corrupt the morals of the people and destroy all faith and loyalty in the country. The exhibition, right? You don't know. Towns worry about this stuff now with different carnivals and whatever. You don't know who you're bringing to the neighborhood. The exhibition was held in Hyde Park in a great building of glass and iron, which afterwards was re-erected as the Crystal Palace. I'll show you a photograph or several photographs of that when I'm done with this section. Financially, it was a great success. The exhibition made many English people realize for the first time that theirs was not the only industrial country in the world, and that commercial prosperity was not a divinely appointed British monopoly. There was the clearest evidence of a Europe recovering steadily from the devastation of the Napoleonic Wars and rapidly overtaking the British lead in trade and manufacture. It was followed directly by the organization of a science and art department to recover, if possible, the educational leeway that Britain had lost. So we see that the exhibition comes out of this reform movement. And let us take briefly a moment to look at that Crystal Palace. You're going to see a lot of steel, a lot of glass, light, strength, stability, modernity. All of these will come together in this 1851 building. And here on the screen share, we'll see what we're after. What am I looking at here? Come on now. Why is this not coming up? Add to stage. There we go. Okay. So let's see if we can open up this one here. Sometimes they get actually smaller when you click on them, but you get the idea, right? It's this very open very industrial looking facade. It would remind you, I thought, to see the front of it, almost of a paddle wheel. That's what struck me initially. This is a paddle wheel. Not that it is a paddle wheel, but rather that it could have been modeled off of that. In some of these pictures, you can see the land out in front of it, so a large open space, very manicured. And then inside, you see whole concourses and quays. That's not the word I want, though. Boulevards. You see whole boulevards at this remarkable site. And a huge thing it is, too. Here's another picture from the top. You can see it goes at the front here where all the pictures are taken. It goes way back. A strange ersatz cathedral, you might call it. It has a very similar construction, almost a cruciform. But is it cruciform or is it two gears? Is it two axles coming to a gear? Like this is, I'm just trying to play with the industrial idea, right? This is one axle, and this is hitting another axle on a gear. So, well, you'd be surprised. A lot of those, if you get into architecture, what looks to be a building with whatever distinctive style will often have these deeper meanings given over to it. So anyway, that's the Crystal Palace. And we will get into, as some candy at the end, Howdy McCoskey's idea that these were actually much older buildings. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Mr. McCoskey some years ago with Chance Garton on the Innoverse podcast, and it was certainly a memorable chat that we had. And Howdy certainly is a man to think outside the box. The Great Exhibition, moving on to section 8 of the 19th century chapter of 1851, released a considerable amount of international talk and sentiment. It had already found expression in the work of such young poets as Tennyson, who had glanced down the vista of the future. I will read Tennyson's poem soon. Not here, but I have the whole thing queued up. To the war drums throb no longer, and the battle flags are furled. In the parliament of man, the federation of the world. There's that idea, pops up again. You hear it in Victor Hugo. You obviously get it from our man here, H.G. Wells. There is this idea that there's a quickening in the 19th century that's breaking down the barriers between nations. Whether you think that's a good idea or not is completely irrelevant to the zeitgeist of the time. But Wells says, the vision of Tennyson was premature. Beneath the apparent peace of that brief interval of liberalism and superficial enlightenment, the seeds of a new crop of international conflicts was germinating. France was nominally a liberal republic, but her president was a Bonaparte, the nephew of the first Napoleon. He was a person of great cunning and enterprise, the arch enemy of Victor Hugo, I should say. And he was destined to bring upon France and Europe even greater disasters than those his uncle had achieved half a century before. The French Republic, which had replaced the Orleans monarchy in 1848, that's the year of revolution, remember? 1848. Again, this is in fact an example of that time of revolution. The Orleans monarchy being replaced by the French Republic. The French Republic had a brief and troubled career. From the outset, it was embarrassed by the crude socialistic proposals, which proposed much economic disorganization and even more business anxiety. The new Napoleon Bonaparte, posing as a liberal safe man who would restore confidence and stabilize affairs, was able to secure his election as president in the October of that year. He took an oath as president to be faithful to the democratic republic and to regard as enemies all who attempted to change the form of government. In 4 years' time, he was Emperor of the French. All right. So now we move into some of the politics of the time, and I'll save that for later this week. I'll put our marker in here, and these bookmarks are available at our store, ApocatastasisInstitute.wordpress.com/store. And they're a fine way to help our institute out. We have special package deals and all sorts of goodies. Okay, now let's bring up the screen share and enjoy Tennyson's poem. We had one poem from John Berryman, and we're getting a two-for today. A twofer. You know what a twofer is, right? 2 for 1? Any of you who worked in retail or food, particularly fast food, will know these sorts of acronyms. Twofer, BOGO. Who knows what BOGO is? Suppose if you're good at cutting coupons, you know what BOGO is as well. Buy one, get one free. Right, BOGO. Okay. But Tennyson was the great British poet of the mid-19th century. And if you only know Tennyson from the Charge of the Light Brigade, which we'll save for our discussion on the Crimean War, or St. Simeon Stylites, or St. Telemachus, these are 2 poems he wrote. You might think he's a man of the past, so to speak, or a man, wrapped up in olden times with military glory and saints and things. But well, he was a versatile fella, and he wrote this poem here. If only the cursor would work. So this is an article looking at Howdy Bukowski's take on the World's Fairs. We can take some look at these daguerreotypes as well when the time comes. But let's get the poem in. Here we go. So this is Alfred Lord Tennyson. And this is an ode for the opening ceremony of the World's Fair. Here's inside the Crystal Palace. You can see so big a tree is growing there. Uplift 1,000 voices, full and sweet. In this, I try to cite it proper, and then this is what you get for it. Okay. Uplift 1,000 voices full and sweet in this wide hall with earth's invention stored, and praise at the invisible, universal Lord, who lets once more in peace the nations meet, where science, art, and labor have outpoured their myriad horns of plenty at our feet. O silent Father of our kings to be, mourned in this golden hour of jubilee. For this, for all, we weep our thanks to thee. The world-compelling plan was thine, and lo, the long laborious miles of palace, lo, the giant aisles, rich in model and design, harvest, tool, and husbandry, loom and wheel, and the enginery, secrets of the sullen mind, steel and gold and corn and wine, fabric rough of fairy fine, sunny tokens of the line, polar marvels, and a feast of wonder out of west and east, and shapes and hues of part divine, all of beauty, all of use, that one fair planet can produce, brought from under every star, brought from over every main, and mixed as life is mixed with pain, the works of peace with works of war. Is the goal so far away, far how far no tongue can say? Let us dream our dream today. O ye the wise, who think the wise can reign, who from growing commerce lose her latest chain, and let the fair white-winged peacemakers fly to happy havens under all the sky, and mix the seasons and the golden hours, till each man finds his own in all men's good, And all men work in noble brotherhood, breaking their mailed fleets and armored towers, and ruling by obeying nature's powers, and gathering all the fruits of peace, and crowned with all her flowers. So that's Tennyson's Ode to the Opening of the World's Fair. Have anyone been to one of these sorts of things? When I was a boy, our school took us to something in Boston that was very much like this. If it wasn't the World's Fair, it was something very like it. And like this thing in Boston, in my time, the World's Fair would have, different booths where, the Chinese would have artifacts of their culture, with real live people from China, and the Afghans, and the Blackamoors, and the Russians, and Mexicans, and whatever. And, you can bet you had your food from those things, and things that would catch your attention. Okay. So there we go. Now, what I'm about to introduce is what you call revisionist history, or alternative history, crypto history. I neither endorse nor decry this. I think it's good that people are very creative with the facts that they're giving, and it could be right, as the author just said. I suspect this is some sort of tribute page to Owen Benjamin, who I believe is quite alive and well. This is the book that Howdy McCoskey wrote, exposing the expositions 1851 to 1915, ancient Roman America. Howdy's, very, very warm to things like the Mud Flood and the Great Reset. I don't know if he gets into Tartaria, kind of very fringe fads of the past couple of years. Not to decry them, but things do come and go. Let's say, have we been lied to? So this is counterfactual history. Nothing wrong with that. Have we been lied to? The historic period between 1851 and 1920 may be no exception. During that time, the great expositions, fairs, were built in Chicago in 1893, Paris in 1900, St. Louis in 1904, San Francisco 1915. These giants, up to 1,200-acre expos, were built in impossible times of less than 2 years. Then, following the end of the event, they were purposely destroyed and thrown into landfills. Each of these fairs were built to resemble ancient Rome, and I believe that was no accident. But were the building of these world expositions newly constructed in the 1890s, or older ones, part of a civilization that was coexisting with ancient Rome and Greece, and simply these things at the fairs were just restored and painted? This book looks at these questions and more. Or in another way to put it, you know why state capitals look like Roman buildings? Because they are Roman buildings. I was in such a state capital lately and had a great deal of fun imagining that to be the case. And hey, weirder things have happened on this world. Weirder things have happened. I mean, this does coincide with this Cabbage Patch Babies and all these orphanages and things. So I'm not endorsing it, but I'm not poo-pooing it either. Perhaps generous viewers and students of this daily series will send me some of these texts, and I can know what I'm talking about. Good. So there we go. There's the World's Fair. But certainly, McCoskey notwithstanding, certainly what we see with them is very much the spirit of progress, the spirit of tomorrow. That's the 19th century in a nutshell. And with that, we will take the bird down. We have much longer topics. I don't know if the class will necessarily go longer, but Wells will certainly give us a lot to get into, particularly when it comes to the American Civil War this week. And also, I'll change the camera. also, especially European colonization at this time as well. And again, this was also part of the time of progress and this feeling of progress. I know we poo-poo colonization in our day. And again, like so many things I have to say is we have to dock that. We have to check that at the door and try to put ourselves in the 19th century. In the 19th century, the ability to dominate these foreign lands and peoples and to bring them this sort of technology and Christianity and whatever the West claimed to offer, this was seen very much like the natural selection, very much like the liberal revolutions, as one more proof of everything is improving. Everything is moving towards a apotheosis. Human history is itself moving towards this climax of improvement and betterment and progress. The colonization movement was absolutely part of that. And Wells gets into it with us in triplicate. So we'll put the bird down here for today, looking at the World's Fair. It's got some poetry in, got our feet wet with the Crystal Palace and Howdy McCoskey. And then tomorrow we will boogie woogie into more mundane topics about politics and so forth. If you're interested in this project, besides maybe these daily broadcasts, a little bit deeper, a little bit more interested in discussion and writing and reading heavier text as well, we encourage you to enroll in the program here at Apocatastasis. That's our unified curricula, our undergraduate curricula in the humanities. So in an integrated fashion, we'll study over 3 years history, literature, philosophy, and languages all together and all in symphonia. And besides that, including many examples in history, we have a lot of classes, standalone classes here at the Institute, taught by myself and the very capable staff here. And we take students of about 15 years of age on up. So with that being said, thank you so much for dropping in. And I'll catch you tomorrow as we make our way through the project and through H.G. Wells' outline of history. Thanks so much. Take care now.